Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Soul Sync Sessions Live. I'm here with Dr. Rasheeka, and I am so excited to be chatting with her. When I saw her interest in coming on here, I got super excited because we both love the human design aspect. She brings in divine blueprint guidance. She's a holistic educator. She's got a lot of different modalities. She said, I mean, she mentioned that she was a manifesting generator, so this doesn't surprise me, all the different modalities that she's bringing together. But as far as the intuitive guidance and everything from there, she really does embody the mind, body, soul, and business within her practice. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with her, and I will hand it over to you to give us an introduction about who you are, how you got started, and what brought you here today.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you first and foremost for having me. It's always an honor to just connect with individuals in this space, not only just who have a knowledge and speak my language of human design, but it's in the space of connecting mind, body, and spirit. And so one thing I'll start off with in terms of, I integrate holistic. The word holistic is can be buzzword, kind of trendy, but I like to explain that how I break down holistic in terms of I look at it in terms of the seven cycles. So you have the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the energetic, which people normally leave out, but the energetic part is important, the community aspect, and then also sexual. A lot of people leave sexual out, but that is a part of our makeup. And so, as a holistic therapist, I'm a holistic therapist in the state of North Carolina, and I'm the owner and founder of Faith, Prosperity, and Change. And I have holistic group practice where it offers therapy, we offer holistic wellness, a lot of coaching. So we offer different services at my practice, but it's important that I always explain what holistic means to me so people will know that I look at all of those things when I'm working with individuals. So that way they can know that it's not just the mental here and these things here, is I look at every aspect of a person. So that is not only my work, but it's also my embodiment and how I do things for myself. And so I know a lot of times when people hear embodiment, they think it's just for how we use those things, but I am going through those domains in my own life. So I tap into how am I feeling energetically today? And so I pay attention to those things in my personal life, which is important. So outside of having my own company, personal hats, I'm also a mother, I'm also a wife. And outside of the journey of my business, I also am a college instructor where I help aspiring individuals who are on the path to becoming future therapists, social workers, human service professionals. So I do wear a lot of hats, but that helps me as a manifesting generator to have all the passions that I love. So all the way from my work in specializing in intimacy after trauma. That is a big part with me is that I specialize in intimacy, trauma, sex therapy, and then I like to incorporate things such as sound healing, Reiki. I love human design. That is a big proponent of my work. So I combine holistic mental health, shadow work, and human design in terms of my coaching spaces.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love all of that. And I kind of blend a couple different things together as far as cycle syncing astrology, human design with my coaching, and as far as developing a personal brand or creating a brand and a business in a way that doesn't burn you out. So I love seeing that you're kind of doing something very similar and touching on all of those. And I love that you introduced the idea of holistic and kind of just defining for what that means for you, because I do think that it has become a very big buzzword. And people use it in a lot of different ways. And I think that as a buzzword, it kind of started to lose its presence, I guess, or its kind
I
of
agree.
depth. Because I do think that holistic practices, from an energetic perspective, I feel like when people hear it now, they think, okay, it's naturopathic medicine or functional medicine or something from that, but it's
Yes.
so much more than just the body.
Mhm.
So I'd love to ask kind of, was there anything that I guess I'll start with the human design because I love the human design part of it. But what led you to be introduced to human design or to allow you to integrate that as a part of your business? Because I feel like human design is also a holistic practice. Like it gives you a very holistic picture of yourself from an
Yeah.
energetic perspective to how you're designed to work and how you're designed to connect with other people too. So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear how you got introduced to it.
Yeah, great question. So I found human design 10 years ago in 2015. I was at a space in my life where I felt like I knew what I wanted to do in terms of career, but I was at a space where I was in deep burnout that led into depression. And I had a loving friend at the time that says, like, we need to go deeper into understanding who you are. Because I had to learn, like, no matter how many of the outside things that I thought was going to fulfill me, such as the job and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life and having those things, I still was missing something deeper in myself. And so I started learning about astrology, I learned about human design, I learned about gene keys. And I took this 2-year program. They helped me go deeper in that work. But before I even found the program, I started studying the books and I started learning about it myself. And I'm like, what the hell is it? It sounds great, but it's confusing. So when I had my first reading, I felt seen. I left my first reading crying and in tears because I'm like, oh my God, nothing is wrong with me. Like just learning that I was a manifesting generator made sense as to why I didn't stay at certain jobs long periods of time. I really felt seen. So I started off with the personal practice and learning for myself, started studying, kind of diving into it. And then when I started learning more about how I can use it from the mental health space, I started integrating into my work as a therapist. So I've been using human design in the therapy room for going a little bit over 6 years now. And so it is a big proponent in my work, but I found it at a time that not only was I learning more about myself, but I learned more about my digestion and how I'm meant to digest information. And I started there instead of with the basics. So I started off learning, looking like, oh, so this is a holistic tool. And because I was going deeper in my own spiritual journey, it just fit. It was perfect. And so I felt like, how did I live my life without knowing this? Because it just fit. And I never felt like it took me to a place where it didn't make sense. Like everything started kind of like, it's literally like connecting the dots. Like I was a little kid with my connect the dots book of like, oh, this is me, this is me, this is me. And all this stuff started to make sense. So went from a personal practice and then knowing like, oh, I can't gatekeep this. I have to share this with others. So started sharing with my family, my friends. Then I started doing readings for myself. And, that's kind of where I was. And so now I can't imagine not having it. Like I can be talking to someone and I'm like, oh yeah, I can kind of feel you're probably a projector. It's like I can't turn it off. Someone take it, turn it off for me, and I can't do it. But so that's what led me. And so my specialty in human design is that I specifically look at the mental health aspects. So I look at the anxiety, the melancholy, the depression. I have found how to locate trauma responses and helping people use that. So I have my own framework in terms of therapy called human design trauma therapy, where I integrate it with my trauma clients as well. So again, when I take that and combine my holistic tools and then have some shadow work, because I study the human design shadow aspect from a different lens to blend psychology. So that fit into what I was doing anyway, as far as my therapy work. And even when I went through my doctorate, I was able to include some human design in there as well with my clients. So I have been doing some deep study from a different lens that has allowed me to look at it from a different way, is still including source material, but also seeing the potential of what human design can be. And so from a mental health perspective, it just fits well with what I do in terms of holistic care.
I love that. And I love how you're integrating all the different layers, and it's a rabbit hole.
It
Once you
is.
once you find it, you can't unsee it. And you see
No,
everything where I'm like, "Oh, yep, yep, I can see how this works." Or you're
yeah,
not ADD, actually, you are just completely a manifesting generator and you're meant to blend all of these things together and you're meant to have
yes,
all of these components. And I love that you're kind of helping to unravel the different layers, because there is a spiritual component to it. So I don't know if you've heard of David Guiam, um, but he doesn't talk necessarily about human design, but I actually heard about him on Jenna Zoe's Human Design podcast.
uh-huh,
And that
okay,
was how I got introduced to his concept. And he talks about the Kabbalah and your cocoons and your soul lessons and your life purpose. And I feel like everybody that is, for me, entrepreneurs, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So anybody that's on an entrepreneurial journey, that is a spiritual journey. But anybody who's gone through trauma or they're an old soul and they've got these different components that are coming through, or past lives, or they're empathic, or any of these different gifts that we have, taking it a step back, I always like to say that your human design gives you kind of a permission slip to be you again.
yeah,
It gives you that permission slip to be like you said, I'm not broken. These are the different components. These are my
hmm,
gifts. These are how I'm doing it.
yeah,
And then you're using it in a way that's tangible for them to be able to unravel things that otherwise they couldn't explain or they couldn't understand. Where
yeah,
sometimes, like talk therapy, I don't know about you and your practice, but I talk therapy I think only gets you so far because you have to kind of get to a certain point. And sometimes for me, I think it's about the depth. Um, and so that's what I loved about human design, was it got people to go deeper, or you can see them on a soul level and their highest potential. And then we can kind of, I call it my breakthrough sessions, because when I look at your human design chart, I can see that blueprint of who you're designed to be. And if there's a
yeah,
gap or a misalignment within you or your business or something like that, where we can help to pivot. Or like I worked with the lady yesterday, we had a breakthrough session and she was talking about how her routine just felt off and she couldn't figure out what it is. And it's something so slight. And because of her incarnation cross and how it was laid out in her specific gifts, it was something very slight that was happening where it was like she was
Mm.
trying to fit into a structured box and her environment is the only part of her that actually needed to be structured. All of her
Oh,
other
yeah.
arrows were pointing to being more intuitive. So I was like, well,
Uh-huh.
let's gamify it. Okay. Let's gamify your morning routine. We're going to write your different morning routine activities on popsicle sticks and pull it out
Ooh,
so you can respond to it as a generator.
I
So
love it.
I love having those different things. What are some of the ways, I guess, that you can? I guess for me, what's leading me to this question is when I was
Yeah.
talking to her about being a generator or being in a role where you have to respond to things or wait for the invitation where you can use the strategy. What are some of the ways that you have found that you can incorporate or tools that people are listening to that how they can still act on things without necessarily feeling like waiting? Because I think that's a misconception that we hear a lot.
Yeah. I think the waiting to respond is something that I studied early on because I'm like, this does not make sense to me. This is not how I've been operating. I'm coming from a conditioned space. But that's one of the reasons why I love it in terms of the holistic space. Because you mentioned about talk therapy. I started off as a talk therapist and I felt so out of alignment, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring human design in because it did take my clients further and it was a game changer. I'm like, okay, I'm doing EMDR and doing some of these trauma techniques and helping people through it, but now I can bring human design into this. So what I like to tell people is when especially if they are sacral beings and they're learning to listen to their sacral in terms of ways to respond, it could be anything. You could be watching a TV show and you might have an aha moment. And so really just kind of trying to teach people to really get into from a creative space and you're not literally just sitting waiting. Because I always think like, so I have to wait till something shows up in front of me. That just didn't make any sense to me. So I kind of skipped over that part. I'm like, what else in the chart is more interesting? Because this is boring to me. It wasn't in alignment. But I had to learn that I had to do some work around my sacral energy. So a lot of times people want to learn about their, what their decision making center is. And it's like, but if not only if it's unconscious, but also well, how have you been using it for so long? And if I've been conditioned to not really listen to my gut and
Mhm.
understand what those guttural sounds mean, then it's not going to make sense to me. So learning that we can respond to something, we can be listening to a song on the radio, something that we
Mhm.
can respond to. So really teaching clients how to get creative, like you're responding to things that you hear, things that you see, things that you're really involved in. It doesn't have to be like, oh, well, someone sent me a message, or someone sent me a DM that I can respond to. No, you got to get creative. Like I can watch I was watching an old school show called Home Improvement the other day,
Mhm.
and I'm listening to the topic, and I'm like, oh, I got some ideas right there just from listening and watching that particular show. So I do try to help clients get creative, especially if they're sacred beings. Even for my projectors, waiting for the invitation, like the old school language, the source language. I had to make it my own and get creative. So clients, I think that they're literally waiting for something because people are like, I'm supposed to just sit and wait for somebody to invite me to something. No, so I think that's important too to really give people a different perspective on how to respond to things. But yeah, I've learned that if you get creative in a way that doesn't seem, you're not only just boring, but that it doesn't feel like you're getting stuck, then it does help
Mhm.
people, think about it. So I love the idea you mentioned about how you work with your client. Because it's something simple as somebody that's new on their journey. Let's say that they buy all the crystals that they feel. And it's like, well, how can we get creative with that? So I think that's the biggest piece too is tapping into what people's creative energy is, or even helping them see what creative can be. Our being is creative. How we speak and how we show up in the world is creative. So we can respond in those ways as well.
Yeah, I love that. And that is something that I always share too, because when it comes to that, if I'm like helping somebody come up with a way to market themselves within their business, for example, and they're like, well, I have to wait to respond. So I have to wait for somebody to, like you said, send a message or to comment on my post or to do something. And it's like, no, you have to create a way for them to be able to engage with you to respond. But we're
Mhm.
also responding to things from the second we wake up in the morning, where it's like you
Yeah.
respond to the alarm waking up, and then, the dog starts barking and he's got to go out,
Mhm.
and, you're responding to different things. So I
Yeah.
think when you take a step back and you look at how much you are responding to, and you can just play with it and get creative
Yeah.
with it. And I love that you were talking about the creativity piece to it, because especially as women, we are all very creative, and the intuitive side is very creative. So
Mhm.
coming back into alignment, for me, when I started my journey and I found human design, that was a missing piece for me, but that came kind of secondary to me healing my body is when I started to feel these intuitive gifts, and then I started to see gaps of like, why are certain things not working? I started to ask the deeper questions of like with marketing, for example, because that was what my background was at the time. Why is what
Okay.
worked for me not working for you? And then I was like,
Yeah.
I found human design and I started to understand myself. I was like, well, what if I applied this in my business to better adapt what I'm doing and then learn how to connect and just take it a step further? So
I
there's
love
so
it.
many layers that you can kind of bring in and attach to it, to be creative with it and to have
For
fun.
sure.
And I like that you mentioned, I'll go back to the creativity piece because that's something that has come up for me, especially with like Leo season happening.
Mhm.
But just being very bold and creative and kind of redefining what creativity is.
Yeah.
Because coming from a background where I was getting paid essentially to be creative, that kind of took a bit of the creative spark away from me, because I felt like, I was always having to output in order to do these different things. So, in
Yeah.
the same way that you were redefining how you respond to things, it's like redefining what creativity is because you're creating meals or creating different drinks or like we're cooking, we're
Right.
creating. So, how do you kind of help your clients if they're struggling with being creative or kind of having an outlet to express themselves to maybe tap back into that if that's something that they've lost?
Oh, that's a great question. So what I always like to start off defining is like seeing where their mindset is around creativity. I like to start. One thing I've learned is that can we go back to defining what words mean, and if the
Yeah.
word doesn't really fit with you, who you are, then what is your definition? So
Yeah.
creativity, a lot of times people hear and think, oh, I have to know how to do art or sing, the more artsy craft, type of thing. But I look at, how they define it, and then we sit with that definition for a while. Because a lot of people say, I'm not creative. Like, well, why aren't you? Because I've been there too. It's just like, I don't know how to paint. I don't know how to do these things. But learning what their definition of creativity is, working with the limiting beliefs that you're not creative because we are all creative. Even when it comes to intuition, even though some people might have deeper or stronger intuitive gifts, we all have an intuition, whether you're splenic authority or not, whether you have it defined or open as far as your spleen center, like we all have some level of intuition. So I think the biggest part is finding the limits and beliefs. We do some work around that, learning what creativity is, and then tapping into like, well, how are you creative? And then helping them see, like, oh, as they're talking and explaining, I'm like, oh, so you do something simple as create this. That's creative. And that could be, like you mentioned earlier, you created a new meal. Maybe you took, I was talking to someone and they were talking about they created like a meal with croissants. And I'm like, there's like, I'm not a cook. I'm like, you just created a whole new meal that I never even thought about with croissants. So again, it's really how do you define it? Work on that that limits and belief around it, and then let's change that and create some new mindset around that. So it's all about mindset and it's all about perspective. So I think that conditioning piece is so important to see where they're starting so we can find value in what creativity means. Because if people don't understand that just them being on this earth is a creative space, then they'll never know where to start. So I think that's a good thing for me to be able to just go there, start with the root, and then anything is possible after.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the redefining of words because I think we've been talking about that. That's been a theme here so far.
Yeah.
But I think it's necessary. And I think that's something that people maybe don't look at or they get overwhelmed when they start looking at different things because they're associating a word like creativity with art, which I think it typically comes from. And so
Yeah.
I've learned to kind of redefine it for myself of like, I am creating different things or how can I be more creative and fun? Like, that's a very fun word for me, and
Yeah.
I think that we kind of define creatives in a certain way. Like I went to an art school, so it was a school for creatives, but
Right.
there's so many different modalities that are within that. And then just kind of looking at how are you creative, like just defining that for yourself is just a great option. And I think
Yeah.
something that you mentioned too is we have to unlearn. I think human design is it's a blueprint for you, but it's kind of unlearning or a guide, a blueprint back to unlearning all of the things that society has told us that we should be doing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, society is built in a very masculine way, which is very structured of like, here's the things that you should be doing. But a lot of times we have to redefine success. Going
Yeah.
another word that we need to redefine is
That's a
redefining
good one.
success, because we're measuring ourselves in ways that are not fair to us. Like we're creating a path for us to fail ultimately.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
have you seen that a lot as far as your work too, kind of helping people to redefine what that looks like or set a realistic goal for
Yeah.
themselves for success?
Yeah, success is a huge one. Even when I got into the teaching space, and one of the classes that I teach is around like orientation to our human services program, and we have a whole chapter on success, how you define success and failure. And I'm a 1-3, so I had to learn how to tap into that 3 energy. And so because I've taken so many lessons and learned from that, I incorporate that, from the classroom to working with my clients. But when I work with a lot of people on them working on what success looks like. And it typically is about a career, it's about money. And a lot of times people are afraid of failure and even afraid of being successful. So it is working on that definition, understanding what that is. And even if they don't have like a line 3 in their profile, if they, them understanding like taking a risk is what we're all literally here to do. Some of us just need to have more lessons in that space, like me. So learning that, and it's crazy because like my son and my husband are 1-3, so a lot of risk taking in this house. But just really helping people redefine. 'Cause I think a lot of times the limits and beliefs and the core beliefs people have around that is really a big barrier for a lot of people's healing. And I call human design the energetic cheat code to healing. So it's like if you understand the cheat code to your energy, you can
Mhm.
go a lot further in your healing. And maybe your healing is around redefining how success looks in your life, because success doesn't have to be a tie. Like you can have the money, the car, the career, all of the
Mhm.
things. But if you're not successful in building self intimacy with yourself, then who the hell are you? You're not going to be
Mhm.
able to function in this world if you don't understand that success does not have to be tied to monetary things. And so I
Yeah.
think that's important too, to get to the root of who taught you what success means and what do you feel like. So again, I'm really big on, let's get to the root, let's unlearn some things and really see what that looks like, because there are some people who will jump into careers or jump into things because of what someone else wanted them to do. And then they feel like, well, I'm successful. I'm not successful. I failed at that. And it's like, well, did you really want to do it in the first place? That's redefining success right there. What does that look
Yeah.
like to even know what failure looks like? And I know what it's like to fear success because we don't know how much it's going to bring to us, and am I even ready or have the capacity for that? So success is a huge lesson for everyone, because you got all these things on social media saying, have discipline and have a routine and have structure. But someone who's neurodivergent or maybe have an open crown in human design or other aspects in their chart, is not going to resonate with that message, or they're going to think that they're a failure because they're not serving or showing up in the way that everybody else is showing up.
Yeah. And I love there's so many different pieces within that that I think are so valuable. And within that, and then the trial and error, like you talked about, I was going to bring up the 3 profile. I'm a 4/6, but the
Oh,
6 line also kind of has that trial and error kind of pieces to it, as
mm-hmm.
far as incorporating what that looks like. And that's how people learn. And I think, too, a lot of times when we come into a space where we are entrepreneurial or we are soul centered and we have these kind of deeper conversations, we need to look at how are you designed to learn? So is it from trial and error, or are you designed to create and learn in a different way? How are you digesting your information? Or are we doing that wrong? Are you setting yourself up for failure by not putting yourself in the right environments or
Mm-hmm.
not having the right connections? Or are you trying to reach a big audience when in reality you should be building small circles for
Yeah.
like 4/6s? So kind of just understanding from an energetic perspective what is aligned and what's not aligned. So unlearning those
Mhm.
other things. Um, and you mentioned too about human design kind of recorrecting or kind of putting you back on your path, if you will. And as far as bringing you back into alignment, it's not about completely removing the friction or completely eliminating those things. Because like
Right.
as a 3 profile, you're going to continue with the trial and error. But it's when you, I think it is very much a mindset piece, but I think it's also, um, let me see, and how when you follow your strategy and authority, you're able to get there quicker. And so, like you said, I like how you described it as a cheat code. It's how can
Yeah.
we like remove some of the resistance or remove some of the friction that we're creating for ourselves. So it's not
Mhm.
going to say that there's not going to be things that don't work out. You're going to have the trial and error, but then also recognizing as well something that is in alignment today might not be in alignment next week. Um,
Exactly.
so kind of tapping into that and understanding what feels in alignment or what does that look like and feel like to you, which is all experimenting because
That's
it's
right.
with your gut, or however you're designed to feel your compass, like figure out what that compass looks like. And it's
Yeah.
different for everybody, even if you have the same. I'm sure you see the differences between your profile, even though you have the same 1-3, there's similarities there with your husband and your son, but you guys
Yeah.
all learn and apply it differently.
Exactly. And that's the beauty. What I love about human design is that you can have 10 generators in a room or 10 1-3s in a room, and it looks so different. And it's like, really, we are all unique. Back to the creativity part, we are all unique. And if someone has a limiting belief that they're weird or they're different, it's going to take them a while to really tap into what the uniqueness is. But that's why I love human design, because it helps people see, like you said, it's a permission slip. And I have, like, I tell people, I sign your permission slip. Now you can show up how you want to. And another word that people use a lot is authentic, but really redefining what that means. And some people can't tap into their authentic selves until they've done the work, which is why I incorporate shadow work in it. So it's like, if you have a shadow around feeling like you have a voice that you're not ready to share, then let's talk about how you're supposed to show up in the room. For a long time, with me having an open emotional center, I wondered why I was out of alignment having 20 plus clients on my schedule a week. And it's like I was taking on too much. And then my open wills center was like screaming as well. So I had to learn over time, like, no, you are trying to fit in the norm of what other people are saying, or what a therapist should look like, or what a person should look like in this particular career. When it's like, no, I need to go back to the basics and realize how I'm showing up energetically. And that's a big part of why I love it, because it helps us, reminds us that we can come back to center, figure it out, and then making sure that we're showing up in a way that feels good for us. If it doesn't feel right, then we're going to be miserable in the process, and no one likes feeling that.
Exactly. And I think I heard a commercial the other day on the radio, and it was saying something like, it was advertising, I think, BetterHelp, like the therapy site where you can find a
Mhm.
therapist, but it was getting people, it was like, well, you can't avoid doing a job. Like, you all have to do a job. We have to live and we have to do this. But it said something like 60 to 70% of the people that are in a job have stress and are stressed out and have to go to therapy to talk about these different things. So it was
Yeah,
basically talking about how, well, we can't get rid of your miserable job, but here's an option to help you. And in
yeah,
my mind, I just went to, there's like 70% of the population is generators. And we are here to build things that bring us joy. So if
yeah.
your job is not bringing you joy, or if something in your life is not bringing you joy, that's 70% of the population that is sitting here at a 9 to 5 desk job when they're working out of alignment with their design. And it's crazy to me, those statistics of people, how disconnected we've become as a society. So I think
Mm.
seeing this tool and having it be something you can look it up online for free and understand a little bit about it, or get a reading with Dr. Rasheeka, or come see me if you have any questions. Like, both of us, we could do a joint thing and have some
I would love
real
that.
fun with
Yeah.
that. That would be super fun.
Yeah.
Um, but just kind of use it as a guidepost almost, to come back to yourself and just to find that joy again and that permission slip, which I think we've lost a little bit of, what the joy is, and the value behind joy, I think.
I agree with that. And a joy list, like especially if I'm working with a generator or MG, even of the other types too. But I definitely try to help people, especially if that's designed like how can we move out of frustration and really creating a joy. I give that a homework assignment all the time. To my coaching clients and my therapy clients. Find a joy list, because you like you mentioned earlier, you're gonna feel this way one day or one week, and next week you're gonna feel differently. So go back to your joy list and see, like, what should I pull from this? Because a lot of times, if I'm feeling burnt out, or if I'm tired or whatever, I can pull out my joy list and say, I haven't sat on my patio in 2 days because of the heat, maybe.
Mhm.
So maybe at the end of the day, I'll go outside and sit out there. But just realizing, like, we have to find those little moments of joy. And then it's okay. That's why I love too, though, how I look at human design. Like, if you have melancholy energy, you don't necessarily have to feel bad that you just felt like crap today. But tomorrow, maybe your joy may be bigger, but today your joy might have been that I took 5 minutes extra in the bathroom before I got up. It's really sometimes finding those small wins. So I think too, the joy is a big part of what a lot of people are seeking, but then
Mhm.
chasing it is sometimes what people get stuck in. And I have people redefine, like, people a lot of times are wanting to find joy and find happiness. But it's like, let's go and redefine what you've been taught. about what happiness is, because maybe you're in a space of depression because you're thinking that happiness is supposed to be feeling cheery and great all the time, and that's not realistic. So I think
Hmm.
too, the joy is what we all should be looking for, but really redefining on what it looks like today and having a list and going back and reevaluating that list and change it up and really looking
Hmm.
at our value, because our values, we sleep on that. Like we can't create goals if we don't know what we value. We could have a value of
Yeah.
something that our family instilled in us, but it really is not in alignment with what we feel it is as an adult or as a person on our healing journey. So that can bring joy too. But know what your values are. That's really important too.
Yeah, and I think I had that I had done an exercise a while back where it was looking at the values and it was looking at where did those values come from, because you can inherit values that you think are, well, I value that, right? But it's like if you
Mm-hmm.
actually sit and ask yourself, especially as somebody who has the authority, where you're supposed to be able to respond to things, if you even create a list of the different values and just say them out loud, what is your gut telling you?
Yeah.
And how can you, or whatever your authority is, what is that saying when you say that the value of family or the value of money? What how are we defining money? Is a big one, but that's a whole topic in itself.
It
But
is.
how are you defining that, or how are you defining again what that success looks like or what joy looks like to you? And it has to be a feeling. I think that we get so caught up in our head, and oftentimes we need to come back into our body in order to be able to truly understand what is resonating and what those values are. So
Yeah.
and then even reconnecting and using your human design as a path for creating a routine or creating a value list or a joy list or things as a place to start. Because I think for myself, I got married young, I got divorced, and after that point, I had realized that I had never really understood who I was, because growing up, I was the oldest child. I was always the quieter one. So it was always, my sister would play the buttons of she's a Leo and and I'm a Capricorn. And she would be very much of like,
Ah,
I'm going to be the bold one that speaks up and is loud just because that's what I want to do. And
yeah.
she would always get her way. And I was like, well, it's fine. I'll just do whatever they want to do. But I said that so much my entire life in, through high school, through college, through then getting married, that I didn't know what it was that brought me joy. So
Yeah.
playing with that and kind of going back, and human design helped me to be able to even experiment with that or feel okay about that, because I have a
Yeah.
lot of Capricorn in my chart. So it's very structured and work is a big thing for me.
Okay.
And then also like the self-worth components too, of like how do you value yourself, and putting that into play and going back into those conversations are so deep and important too.
Oh yeah, they are, and that's what a lot of my work is. It does, go around people looking at their self-worth. And it's interesting because it's like our stories are similar but a little bit different. Like, so I'm a Leo and I'm the oldest, and my brother, he's a Virgo. So our energies, and we're 7 years apart, but our energies were always different in the home. And my father is a Leo and my mom was a Sagittarius. And so a lot of energy growing up in that space. But then also for me, I started out trying to figure out who I was through career and being in relationships, but it wasn't until I got into my 30s where I had my son. I didn't get married until I was 38. I had my son at 32. And so I was just trying to find myself in my early part of the year because I just did not click with the whole fine and get, even though I thought, okay, you need to get married, have kids, and do all the things what they say we're supposed to do, but I was still trying to figure out, like, I need to find my career path. And then even though I was in a relationship at the time, I still always felt like I was missing something. So when I found human design, it really helped me to really define what it was I wanted in my life outside of the career. I started learning my purpose, and really
Mhm.
tapping into what those things meant for me. So that way, when it was time for me to become a mom and was time for me to have, considering if marriage was even a thing, because with me, my parents were getting divorced. So for a long time, I had an aversion. It was like, nope, not nope. Was couples, I would give them, provide them therapy and coaching, all those things. But I really had to redefine what marriage meant to me because I wanted to come from the old way of what it looked like.
Mhm.
All the way from learning about, like, I'm very transparent. My husband and I have different sleeping spaces, and that works for us. He's a manifesting
Mhm.
generator as well, but we have different interests. We sleep differently, all of these
Mhm.
things. And the outside world is just like, no, you don't do that. You're supposed to sit together and, all of these things. And so I think too, when we are able to really learn who we are, we can really tap into the creativity of us and really can shine in our light. And this is why, again, why I love human design, because it really teaches us that we're okay in a way
Mhm.
that we don't have to care about what other people think. And it's okay to
Yeah.
show up the way we want to.
Yeah, I love that. And the purpose piece I think is huge because I think the people that are becoming entrepreneurs or breaking out of that space or seeing that they are feeling misaligned and wanting to act on that and they're ready to kind of cross that bridge. The human design is an amazing tool, and talking about your purpose and having that discussion is a huge discussion. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times without a tool or without, at least for myself, without something to reflect on, I was always like, well, what is my purpose? Like, and it was just kind of an open-ended question. And, as a generator for me, I oftentimes need a yes or no response. And so,
Yeah.
you throw these different things at me. I'm like, well, that sounds kind of good, but I also like this kind of piece, or like,
Yeah.
so when I was able to look at, my incarnation cross and the nodes and the north nodes and different things like that, and to kind of see the path, it was very eye-opening for me. So a lot of times too, with my clients, I'll bring in the Ikigai, which is the Japanese version where it blends what are you good at, what can you be paid for, what's your
Yeah.
mission, what does the world need, and it blends together, and that's kind of a purpose statement. But I'll
Mhm.
create an Ikigai chart based off of their human design blueprint and astrology
Ooh,
blueprint and kind of integrate that together,
right.
to be able to get to a place where we can define who they are, what their purpose is, and what that looks like. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, I'd be interested to see if you have the same experience because as I'm going through somebody's chart with them or I'm talking about it with them, whether they've heard of human design, maybe just a little bit, or if they've never heard of it before, but this is kind of a new thing to them. As
Yeah.
I'm walking through their blueprint, a lot of times they're like, this is so true. Like you said, you felt so seen the first time that you heard about it. And it's like you are being seen on a different level. And when it comes to the purpose, it's like, I am doing these things. Like for me, it was like, wow, I already am integrating this into my business. Like I've already had this piece. There's a piece here about like wellness side for me, which was the
Mhm.
start of my journey and bringing in all of that piece. And then gate I have the gate of inner knowing is my strongest gift. And so it's like I
Okay.
have always just known things. And,
Yeah.
I never kind of attached that to it. I would always see intuitive
Mhm.
women and be like, "Well, how do they know these things?" But it's like, Sam, you know these things too. And it's like
Mhm.
integrating those pieces into my business. I was already doing that on its subconscious level. So it's
Yeah.
like your soul is already guiding you. And this is, again, giving you that permission slip or allowing you to see it from a different perspective. So when you get a reading, it's like, oh, it's like a remembrance of who you are.
Mhm. That's what I love too. And yeah, I do set in clients when I'm, going through, especially like I said, I love my newbies. And so it's just when they say like, oh my gosh, that's me. Yeah, that's true. That rhythm, that makes sense. And it's like, I'm feeling fulfilled over here. My sacral is lighting up just hearing those things because it's like now that you know that yes, you're designed to do these things. And it's just a beautiful way for people to come into who they are. Like my son, he's 8, he'll be 9 in October, but I tell people I was learning looking up his chart when I was in hospital after I had him to know he's a generator. But now that he's getting older, he sees me pull up charts. So he knows when I say human design, he knows when I say Reiki, those kind of things. But I'm teaching him like what it is, as far as understanding that his cave environment. So he'll know, like he'll say, "Mom, I'm going in cave mode," when he gets his little forts, and wants to do that. Him understanding that he has a cold digestion and why he drinks water all the time. Someone else may say, "Well, he's drunk 3 bottles already." I'm like, that's because he's hot natured in the inside of his body. So again, I like for him to, as he's getting older, to really understand it from his way because I've been studying it enough to be able to show little things, and it's made me a stronger parent because I've been able to learn things about him and me knowing also that the centers he has open, I can start teaching him these things and how to work with that energy. I think it's important too for us to like know that it has so much potential to help, not only, excuse me, our family members, but also helping to see like this is already there. Even with my
Yeah.
incarnation cross, with my son, like I have 7, gate 7 in my conscious son. And so it's one of those things where I always felt like, well, I was always a leader, but I had to learn that I was more of an intuitive, not only an intuitive leader, but that
Mhm.
I worked well behind the scenes. I didn't have to be at the top of the ladder to feel accomplished. And that's how I kind of felt. So when I've had jobs in the past where they wanted to move up the ladder, I'm like, no, I'm fine here. Can I keep the money that y'all want to give me, but stay in the same role? But really learning like I was already naturally doing some of these things, but someone else, condition wise, society, family, whatever, would tell me, no, you're not supposed to do that. So I think that's something too to really learn how to walk in it, but then embrace it and accept it, and really know that human design is what it's meant to be is an experiment, but also an
Yes.
experience. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's so important. And the experience of being a parent and saying like the fact that you can integrate those different things or you're teaching him from such an early age, I think is such a massive difference. And I feel like that is becoming more prevalent, maybe not specifically with human design and integrating those things, but on an energetic level of just understanding who am I from that perspective, but then how am I designed to connect with other people or to work with other people or in this dynamic of your family, what
Yeah.
makes the most sense? Like you said, your sleeping arrangements or how your son is like, he knows that he needs a little bit of away time. He needs to go in
Yeah.
his cave sometimes. So understanding that and then allowing that's just going to, I'm so excited for the generations to come who kind of integrate these things and have parents who are more conscious about that because it's
Yeah.
bringing them back to their root and giving them a foundation that really is rooted in alignment with their true self. And it's allowing them to just expand their consciousness from such an early level without having, there's always going to be some conditioning and some of those different things, but without
Yeah.
having all of the society conditions where you're just kind of completely blind to it. It lifts the veil, so to speak,
Yeah. Yeah.
to have those conversations. So I love that you're doing that. And I loved hearing that it's an amazing tool as a parent to just understand who you are or even see that compatibility of, okay, what is your role within the family unit? Or if you're looking for a partner within a business or you're doing something like that, starting from that perspective of like seeing where you are and seeing the gaps where you have, where they might have a gate or a channel that connects the channel to you. So that energetic connection is there and you have that circuit complete. I have a
Yeah.
triple split in my chart. So like I've
Right. I thought it was
learned
a triple split.
it's hard because like I can see it so easily with somebody when I'm having a conversation and it's lit up, the downloads and the channeled messages just are so strong. I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah.
here's how you do that. We take this piece and we take this piece and we connect it and boom, here we go. And here's how you're going
Yeah.
to implement that. But when I do it for myself, I'm like, it's crickets.
Yeah.
So, but I need another energy to bounce it off from. But going on a spiritual perspective, I got a message the one day where it was like the divine energy can also connect to that. So kind of tapping into how can the divine energy or even just putting you in a space where you're in an environment like I now work in a co-working space or at coffee shops and different things a lot of the time because being in the energy of that I can pick up and it connects my energetic centers where I can download information regardless if I'm talking to somebody or not. So it's
Yeah.
just
I love that.
playing with it, like you said, experimenting, which is fun.
Yeah, and that's the big piece. So that's one thing I think that has helped me when I decided to launch my own business and have my own company is that it is important because with me, I'm a single definition. So I'm a single definition. My son's a triple split, and my husband is a split. So me learning all the different things, not only in my own family environment, but also when it comes to my environment. I just hired a therapist, and so it was important for me to know what her human design was, so I can know how we're going to click together. And because she started off as an intern, I learned about her along the way, but her chart came to life. So I was able to learn those things too, to learn more about what it was for her to show up in my business and how we could work together. So I
Hmm.
think in the business aspect, I love trying to teach. I have a program that I'm going to be launching for specifically for therapists to help them not only integrate human design in a therapy room like I do, but also in their business for so that way they can know like you don't need to have 20, 25, 30 clients in your caseload. That's why you're tired and burnt out. Maybe you should think about different ways to get creative and how to use your brand. And so I think too that that's important in the business to know like you're designed to market a certain way, you're designed to figure out what your purpose is. And maybe you think that you're supposed to be a therapist or a coach, but maybe not full time. You really need to be an educator and really help people guide. So I think it's so important that if even people, if they have to know every single thing about the chart, I'm like, listen, it's a layered system. I'm still learning 10 years in.
Yes.
And even though I incorporate gene keys and I incorporate different other tools in there. I love the aspect of learning, but when I can help individuals get a little bit clearer in their business and in their messaging and finding what their niche is from a way that matches their human design, it helps them out so much. And then they're attracting the right clients for them. And then we're having successful businesses when we know that we're showing up. I like the creative tool. My business, I put that in the human design chart, and my business is a manifesting generator. So I learned from that
Yes.
I'm going to have all these different services. It's not just when I started off, it was just focusing on therapy, but I'm like, no, I'm meant to add in all these other things. So I think that's important too for us to realize that if we just have fun with being creative and experimenting, once we know little parts of our design and really see what's in alignment, because there are some things that people will say, well, I just don't resonate with that part of my chart. And it's like, well, it's either you're probably still stuck in conditioning, or maybe you need your perspective stretch, or maybe you just need to play around with it. It doesn't have to be, fit to the T. It's really meant for us to just see what works. And then if it don't work, throw it out and pick something else. So that's the beauty. I think that people, just need to just sit in for a little bit.
I love that too. And then you mentioned pulling your business's human design chart. And I was in a quantum healing session, and she got a message for me where she said, Sam, you need to connect with your business. So it's like a lot of times we see our business as an extension of ourself, but your business is actually its own energetic identity. And it has an Akashic record, and it has a blueprint, and it has a human design. So I did the same thing for me when I was struggling with, I guess, finding the identity within my business. And my business is a projector, and I'm a generator, and projectors guide generators. So
Ooh,
I
yeah.
needed to like check in with my business almost from that energetic perspective, or like I would meditate on, okay, what does my business need today? Like, where do I need to show up today within my business, or what should I be building in order to integrate that? And I think my business as a whole is very much a guide. And I was trying to, I think I was being too literal when I was first learning about human design, and I was integrating it into my business. And I was like, well, I'm
Mhm.
meant to build things. So I was building things for other people, going back to the creative piece where I was creating websites and I was doing the design. And then I started to see the power behind it. And now I'm like, no, I'm meant to build a container for these conversations to happen, and for there to be mirrors, and to help people to integrate these things and build tools that they can integrate into their business. So again, looking at how does that perspective work, and how can you work creatively within your business, and collaborate with your business as another identity. So I love that topic. I love how kind of going in. I actually have a service where I do a brand and business alignment audit, where I'll like audit your business blueprint and then your business or your blueprint in perspective, to compare the two of them. And it's like a compatibility chart almost of like, how can we connect the two, or how are you out of alignment there with your brand, and how can we bring your embodiment into your business.
That's a good service. I love that. Now that's creativity. That's to get people thinking and looking at it from a different way. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, just breaking out of that mindset too.
Yeah.
And then I know we're running close on time, but I wanted to ask one question.
Yeah.
Well, I have two questions left, but my first question, because you brought up the shadow work and you kind of bring in the shadow aspects, and I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and I think it was probably David Guy as well, because I listen to that guy too much probably, but
It's all
he
right.
has really good messages.
Yeah.
But with the Lionsgate portal and all of the energies, I know that a lot of people have been feeling a lot of, well, and we also have the full moon happening this weekend. We
Hmm.
have Lionsgate today, and we've
Yeah.
been in Mercury retrograde. We're on the tail end of that. But a lot of that has been very heavy for people. And I think a lot of times it kind of looks at shadows. So from a shadow perspective, he speaks about how nothing is actually dark. Like even if you're in a shadow phase, it's actually light, or the light trying to come in, and it's showing you where there's opportunity for healing. So
Hmm.
I'd love to kind of touch on that perspective and see how you integrate that into your work, or how you kind of bring what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And what I always tell people is that, we can't really embrace our gifts until we really understand where we started from. And I feel like the shadow, it starts off in our childhood. And so going back to what we were saying earlier about going back and looking at what the root causes and where those things come from, because and I just thought of a particular gate in mind, like I have the gate 44. And so I was constantly really working on that shadow of like the fear of the past repeating itself and really seeing how that showed up in my life. And so really sometimes with clients, I'm really looking at like what are some patterns that you are just sick and tired of? And
Hmm.
letting them see, like, oh, well, this could potentially be a shadow because of how you're viewing it. And so if you're thinking that it means dark, if that's, shadow work gets a negative connotation, maybe people think like, oh,
Hmm.
that's the demonic, something's wrong. But it's like, no, if we're okay with who we are and who we be, then we can understand that it's all light. We just have to embrace the shadows. And so that's why I use the word, can we embrace that it's okay if we're not operating in our best today. We might be in that shadow energy, but we need to go in and see why this has shown up, why this is a negative pattern, or is it even a negative pattern? It could just be a pattern
Hmm.
that we've been told that is negative, but it really is who we are. So I really think that and when we're embracing the shadow, we create more light and then we can
Hmm.
tap into our gifts and go back into really redefining again what that authentic part of us is. And that sometimes being authentic is saying, like, yeah, this is my shadow. I want more people to be okay with saying, like, this has been a shadow of mine, or this is a place where I don't shine the best, but I shine enough. And so
Hmm.
people sometimes have that limiting belief of, I'm not enough. But when I ask people, well, what is enough? They get stuck. Like, there's the shadow. Let's do some work around that.
I
So
love that.
I totally agree with that.
I love that question. And it's true, like we have gates that are defined, we have gifts that are specific. We're going to be better at things than other things, but just kind of recognizing that and embracing that we are all whole, we are all creators, we are all here in from a place of wholeness. And if there's a shadow or something that appears negative to you, it's really just shining a light on something that you're here to overcome or release in this lifetime in order for you to elevate your consciousness.
Yeah.
So I love that perspective. And then you might have already answered this in the beginning, but on these calls, my question that I love to ask or kind of close with is what is the point of impact that for you kind of got you into the direction that you are in today? I know we talked a little bit about your introduction to human design, which may be your point of impact. For me, it was when I suffered from adrenal fatigue and I started to go down a functional medicine path that as I healed my body, it kind of started to click into these different places, these different intuitive gifts. And then I learned about human design and cycle syncing, and it brought together these different modalities. So since you do have a lot of different modalities, is there something in particular or one or two points of impact that stand out for you that led you to where you are today and led you to incorporate all of the beautiful modalities that you have in your business?
I would say before I even like found human design, I found chakra work in Reiki at the beginning, which allowed me to go deeper. And so when I went deeper into my holistic training as far as therapy, the biggest impact always led me back to energy work and really understanding the root of what energy was. And I think, again, like I said earlier, me blending, taking what I love with the holistic tools, the mental health aspect of it with human design and really learning how to embrace the shadow, that has made the hugest impact. And that's my go to now. I'm a big advocate for people understanding like how can we take some of these tools and turn them into skills. And once we have a skill, we can tap into that whenever we want to and really understand. That's why my goal is to help individuals work on self intimacy. So, like, if we don't understand who we are and find the skills from the tools that we have found to create these skills, then we're not going to understand what we're meant to do, what our purpose is. So I would say the huge impact will always be energy, which is why, again, I feel like people sleep on the energetic part of holistic healing. So I would say the energetic piece is so important because I'm bringing up my son the other day, but I'm teaching him so many things now. But he'll say, "Can you do Reiki when he's having trouble sleeping?" And so I always have to go back to what that looks like because understanding the chakras helped me appreciate the 9 centers of human design. So that is the
Yes.
biggest impact. And if I incorporate those things with my clients, even them helping them understand of like what the root chakra represents, and then they'll understand what the root center means, then that energy piece is so important. And people understanding, like I'm like, go look up Einstein and remember what what he created, but going back to basics and understand that energy is where it all starts.
I love that. And everything is energy. Like money is energy. We are energy. You can pick up on
Yeah.
the energy and energetic imprints, and you're picking up on it, especially with certain open centers. You can attach more energy or people that are empathic. That was part of the reason what led me to burnout is because I wasn't aware about the energetic boundaries and I didn't know the energy hygiene of being able to like cleanse the energy off of myself. So I was just
Oh, yeah.
constantly a sponge absorbing it. And then that too kind of helps you to redefine what is mine versus what is not mine and
Yeah.
define yourself again. So coming back into what is the truest alignment of yourself.
Yeah,
So I love
I love
that.
that. Yeah, me too. And I'm glad that you asked that question. That is a good way to close because it's like at the end of the day, same thing for me. Like when I reached burnout and went into the depressive mode and started having the case of what I call, excuse my language, but the case of the buckets, I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't want to do nothing. I don't care about the job. I just didn't care. And people think that burnout, the last thing, the end phase is depression, but it's really apathy. And when I started getting from depression and start not caring about how I showed up and what I was doing, that really taught me like something is wrong. And I'm glad that my friend led me into a space to say, we got to go back in and look at how you're really showing up and understanding who you are. So I think that's a big piece too, is that if you reach a place where you're getting towards something like burnout, really understanding like what that actually means. And sometimes our soul is burnt out because we're not living in alignment. So if we can do some deep soul work, oh, we're gonna be all
Yeah.
right.
And I think that's too, we talked about success a lot today and we talked about a lot of different things, but really understanding without monetary success, defining what is like a soul level success for you and kind of coming back to that. And I
Yeah.
think the point of impact question for me too is important because I want everybody who's listening to know that it doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be a big trauma or a big event or a big life change or something that can happen. It can be something as simple as like for me, I was driving into work and
Yes.
realized I took a wrong turn and couldn't figure out where I was. And then I was like, I need to make a change. And so it was because I was hitting that level of burnout where I had the brain fog, I had the fatigue, I was not having like the feelings in the way that I should be feeling. It was very like even tone. And it was that kind of led me in here today. So I love that. So I would love, I know there's so much amazing work that you could do. We could talk for a million hours on all things human design. I love all of this, and I would love to do a collaboration sometime. But I would love to
Yeah.
just have you share how can people work with you? What are some of the things that you have as far as your offers, and where can they find you to connect with you and continue following all of these amazing projects?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. My name is Dr. Rasheeka is holistic. And then I have a website, drrashikaisholistic.com. So that is where you can find me. And then as far as offers, like I am building a community around shadow work by design. So I'm looking for to work with women specifically who are ready to do the shadow work and ready to heal. So we'll take human design and look at the shadow aspects and really tap into that. So that way they can go deeper into their healing. So I'm launching that in the fall. And so that's something that I'm going to have just for the community as a whole. And other things that I'm working on specifically for therapists so that way they can again learn how to integrate these things into the therapy. And so I'm going to be showing up on social media a lot more. But it's more anything if you know, if you want to follow, if you feel along with this conversation, I hope to see you on these social media streets.
Awesome. Yes, I'm so excited to see all of those programs sound amazing. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited to see where it goes. And I love this conversation. So thank you so much for showing up with me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hold on. And there we go.